So I passed around for everybody to get a closing disclosure, and this is what we're going to go over. But what I wanted to remind everybody, because last time I talked about the loan estimate, which is replacing the good faith estimate, and this is all because of the government, who we love so much, decided that they needed to redo all the forms to protect the consumer, and I agree with some of the changes, but some of them are just making our jobs more difficult. But the new regulation is called TRID, and it's called Truth in Lending Real Estate Settlement Procedures Act, and that's effective October 3rd. So what I wanted to go over today is, like I said in a minute, this is the form that everybody's familiar with. I have 2 closings today. This is the form that everybody will see and everybody cares about. And typically, we like to get this to the lender 24 hours, or to the buyer 24 hours in advance. But if the buyer moves the closing up and doesn't tell me, then that sort of hampers things. So what I want to go over today is the closing disclosure. This closing disclosure replaces the settlement statement. And at the beginning of the transaction, like I talked about last time, we did a loan estimate, which replaced the good faith estimate. So there are a lot of key things on here that are going to stick out to someone. And it is a good document because it compares what the loan estimate had at the beginning against the closing disclosure. And there are tolerances that a lender cannot go outside. So if a lender forgets to disclose the Georgia intangibles tax, which is $3 per thousand based on the loan amount, then the lender has to eat that. So it's very important for us to check our figures before we disclose. Now, one of the things, if you look at this, it goes over the loan terms. It says, can this amount increase after closing? No, no, no. That's always been the case, but we have people who don't understand that, we don't have all that power. Prepayment penalty. None of the loans that I do at Fidelity have a prepayment penalty, and very few mortgages out there do. Those used to be about 10 years ago when you had bad credit loans. And you needed to stay with that loan for at least 2 years before you had a prepayment penalty. But right now, it points it out in front of you in big letters if you have a prepayment penalty. The projected payment section I like because if you have mortgage insurance, if you don't have 20% to put down on a home, then you have to pay mortgage insurance. And so this gives you an idea that after 1 to 7 years, based on anticipated principal payments, you should have a 20% equity position and you should be able to drop mortgage insurance. So that gives everybody a little bit of ideas. The escrow, it reminds people if they have an escrow account. I will have people say, oh yeah, I want escrow for taxes and insurance, and they get the settlement statement, and they look at the second page and they go, why are you collecting 12 months of taxes? I'm buying it today. First of all, you wanted to escrow, and second of all, the tax bill is published. But if you look on the front page, the seller, Carrie Sandy, is paying the portion from the first of the year through today. So we do remind people whether they're escrowing and how that's funded. The one thing that I like to remind people of is your principal and interest payment can never change. But your mortgage payment, if you escrow, will always, always change. And that's because taxes go up, insurance goes up. So as much as I like to control things, I can't control that. So on first-time home buyers, I remind them at closing, and then I prepare for when they get their annual escrow statement at the end of the year showing the payment went up. They go, you said my mortgage payment couldn't go up. So it's fine, that's my job. Questions are my job security. Now we go into the next page and we're talking about closing costs. Now this is the same thing that's on the good faith estimate, which is now being replaced by the loan estimate, and it just breaks down what the borrower is paying and what the seller is paying. Even if the seller is paying closing costs, like Kay would negotiate maybe for Eric and Mariana $5,000 and seller pay closing costs, that's just going to be a lump sum credit on this document. But everything starts on the borrower's side, and then you see a lump sum credit later. A few things that are sort of surprising to people at closing, if you look down at the bottom on HOA fees, those are indicated in the contract, but they're not part of my loan closing. So when I send out a loan estimate on the front end, I don't know what those HOA costs are going to be. If you're buying a condominium, the attorney has to get a clear to close letter, meaning there's no outstanding assessments. And recently, I had a closing letter cost $370. Yeah, so that's added to the total that the buyer has to bring to closing. So these detail these costs out there. And those are things that I didn't know on the front end. We don't have anything to do with the HOA fees. So we total everything up, and it gets down to all the wonderful closing costs. And it's just spelling everything out. And the borrower can take the loan estimate that they got on the front end and compare it to the closing costs at the table. The next page, it calculates the cash to close. And this is where you can see where the seller is paying for the items and everything. And it breaks it down. If you look below on, if you go down to the bottom, which I love this is basically how the math works. You have the purchase price, then you have the closing cost, and the amounts paid by seller in advance, which are the taxes that are already being paid. And then you have your credits. You have your escrow money, which is called deposit. We're giving you a loan amount of $162,000. And then there's some other credits, a rebate from a title company, and then some more tax credits. So that comes down to the cash to close for borrower. So that's how much they have to bring to closing. And borrowers can no longer bring a bank check, a cashier's check, a treasurer's check, an official check. The funds have to be wired. And the reason being is those checks are fraud now. So you'll see on the news where people have had official checks, cashier's checks as fraud. So now everything has to be wired, and the wire has to go into the attorney's escrow account, and the wiring instructions need to be sent from that attorney to the borrower, because we've had wire fraud to where someone said, oh, here are the wiring instructions, and it goes to, say somebody's account in, Mexico. So we're very detailed. Now the next page, real quick, is the last page, and just a couple things. Is on most loans these days, they're not assumable. So we point that out. You do not have a demand feature. I can't get mad at you and say, pay me all the more money. So we can't accelerate the note. It'll tell you whether the loan has a negative amortization. And that would be on a balloon payment or something like that. We don't have negative loans. And then it'll tell you whether you can make any prepayment penalties. Any additional principal reductions. On most loans, you can make additional principal payments in par and whole. It saves you interest over the life of the loan and shortens the term of the loan. And couple last things, big surprise, security interest. It's not an unsecured loan or taking your house as collateral. So I find it funny that we point that out on the last page of this document. So this will change everyone's life because it has to be delivered and acknowledged by the borrowers 3 business days prior to closing. So if someone is out of the country and can't get to their internet to acknowledge receipt, that closing is not going to happen until they can acknowledge it, and then we close 3 business days later. So if you have any questions, any concerns between myself as your mortgage professional and Ms. Caborn as your real estate professional, we'll get you closing on time.